I couldn't think straight. His hands were warm against my thighs, hidden beneath my desk, fingers tracing patterns that made my breath catch. The office was supposed to be empty at this hour, just the two of us finishing the quarterly report. But somewhere between reviewing copy and adjusting layouts, the space between us had disappeared entirely. "Anyone could walk in," I whispered, even as I leaned closer to him. He looked up from where he knelt beside my chair, his eyes dark with intent. "Then we better be quiet," he murmured, his touch growing bolder. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in stark relief, but all I could focus on was the heat building between us. Before we dive deeper, hit that like button and subscribe if you're enjoying this story. Your support means everything, and trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. It started 3 hours earlier. Lucas had knocked on my cubicle wall, his sleeves rolled up, tie loosened from another long day. "Gemma, you staying late again?" His voice carried that familiar warmth that always made me glance up from my screen. I gestured at the mountain of copy spread across my desk. "This campaign isn't writing itself. What about you?" "Same. Editorial review for the morning presentation." He leaned against the partition, close enough that I caught his cologne. Something subtle, expensive. "Want company? We could work in the conference room, spread everything out properly." The conference room. Glass walls on 3 sides, but after 6 p.m. the place was a ghost town, just security making rounds every few hours. I gathered my materials, hyper-aware of how his eyes followed my movements as I stood, smoothing my dress. It was navy blue, fitted, professional, or it had been this morning. Now, under his gaze, it felt like something else entirely. We settled, at opposite ends of the long table, laptops open, documents scattered between us. For the first hour, we actually worked. I revised headlines while he marked up layouts, the familiar rhythm of collaboration. But as the office grew darker around us, the atmosphere shifted. Our conversations grew longer, straying from campaign metrics to personal stories. He told me about his weekend hiking plans. I mentioned the novel I'd been reading. Normal things, except nothing felt normal anymore. "You know," Lucas said, setting down his red pen, "I've been wanting to tell you something." The words hung in the air between us. I looked up from my laptop, meeting his gaze across the table. The space suddenly felt smaller, more intimate. "What's that?" My voice came out softer than intended. He stood, walking around the table with deliberate steps. "I think you're incredible at what you do. The way you craft stories, find the perfect words." He stopped beside my chair, close enough that I had to tilt my head to look at him. But that's not all I've been thinking about. My pulse quickened. We were crossing a line and we both knew it. Office relationships were complicated, messy. But the way he looked at me, like I was something precious he'd been waiting to touch, made all those concerns feel distant. "Lucas," I started, but he was already reaching for me, his fingers brushing along my cheek with reverent care. "Tell me to stop," he whispered. Instead, I stood, closing the distance between us until our bodies were almost touching. The heat radiating from him was intoxicating, making me forget where we were, why this might be dangerous. His hands found my waist, gentle but certain. "I've wanted this for months," he admitted, his forehead resting against mine. "Every meeting, every late night, watching you work. You're brilliant and beautiful, and I can't focus on anything else when you're around." The confession sent warmth spiraling through me. I reached up, my fingers threading through his hair, pulling him closer. "Then don't stop," I breathed against his lips. The first kiss was soft, testing, a question asked without words. When I responded, pressing closer, he deepened it, his hands sliding up my back. Every touch sent electricity through me, building into something I couldn't ignore. His lips moved to my neck, finding that sensitive spot that made me gasp, my fingers gripping his shoulders for support. "Not here," I managed, even as my body betrayed my words, arching into his touch. The conference room was too exposed, too risky. "My office," he murmured against my throat. "Corner suite, no windows facing the floor." We gathered our things hastily, trying to look professional even as tension crackled between us. The walk to his office felt endless, every step measured, careful not to touch, even though every fiber of my being wanted to. He unlocked the door, ushering me inside before closing it firmly behind us. His office was larger than I remembered, with a substantial desk and a small seating area. But all I could focus on was the way he looked at me in the lamplight, hungry and patient all at once. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, giving me one last chance to retreat. Instead of answering with words, I stepped closer, my hands working, at his tie, sliding it free. His breath hitched as I began unbuttoning his shirt, revealing the warm skin beneath. He was lean, defined, exactly what I'd imagined during those long meetings when my mind wandered. His hands moved to the zipper at the back of my dress, fingers steady despite the intensity in his eyes. "You're so beautiful," he whispered as the fabric loosened, sliding down my shoulders. Cool air hit my skin, but his touch kept me warm, hands tracing patterns along my arms, my collarbone, anywhere he could reach. We moved together toward his desk, documents and files pushed aside to make room. He lifted me easily, setting me on the edge, his body fitting perfectly between my legs. The solid wood was cool against my skin, a sharp contrast to the heat building between us. His lips found mine again, deeper this time, more urgent. I could taste the coffee he'd been drinking, feel the slight roughness of his jaw against my skin. My hands explored his chest, mapping every line, every reaction. When I found a sensitive spot just below his collarbone, he groaned softly, the sound sending shivers through me. "I want to touch you," he said, his voice rough with desire. "All of you." His hand skimmed along my thighs, pushing the fabric of my dress higher, fingers tracing patterns that made me breathe harder. Every touch was deliberate, focused, designed to unravel me piece by piece. When he found the sensitive skin at my inner thigh, I gripped the edge of the desk, overwhelmed by sensation. "So responsive," he murmured, watching my face as his touch grew bolder. "I love how you react to me." He took his time, learning what made me gasp, what made me arch toward him. His attention was complete, unwavering, as if nothing existed beyond. This moment, this space we'd created together. The outside world, deadlines, colleagues, office politics, faded into irrelevance. When he finally moved closer, his body pressing against mine, I was already trembling with want. He paused, his eyes searching mine. "Tell me what you need," he whispered. "You," I breathed. "All of you." He moved with careful intensity, each motion deliberate and controlled. The sensation built slowly, waves of warmth spreading through me, making me forget everything except the feeling of being completely connected to him. His breathing grew ragged, matching mine, our rhythm finding perfect synchronization. Time seemed suspended. There was only the feeling of him moving with me, the soft sounds we made together, the way he whispered my name like a prayer. When the tension finally crested, washing over us both, I held him close, feeling his heartbeat against my chest, fast and strong. Afterward, we stayed entwined, neither wanting to break the spell. His fingers traced lazy patterns on my skin, his breathing gradually returning to normal. "That was, he started, then shook his head, smiling. "I don't have words." "Incredible," I finished for him, pressing a soft kiss to his shoulder. We dressed slowly, reluctantly returning to the real world, but as we gathered our things, the weight of what we'd done began to settle. Tomorrow, we'd have to face our colleagues, maintain professionalism, pretend nothing had changed. "What happens now?" I asked, uncertainty creeping into my voice. Lucas pulled me close, his hands framing my face. "Now we figure it out together," he said simply. "This doesn't have to be complicated unless we make it complicated." The next morning arrived too quickly. I dressed carefully, choosing a conservative blouse and skirt, trying to project normalcy even as my mind replayed every moment from the night before. The elevator ride to our floor felt endless, anticipation and anxiety warring in my chest. Lucas was already at his desk when I arrived, looking perfectly composed in his usual suit and tie. But when our eyes met across the office, something electric passed between us. A small smile played at the corners of his mouth, and I felt heat rise in my cheeks. "Morning, Gemma," called Sarah from accounting as she passed my desk. "You look radiant today. Good weekend?" "Just caught up on sleep," I managed, grateful that my voice sounded normal. The morning passed in a blur of emails and phone calls, but I was hyper-aware of Lucas's presence. Every time he walked past my cubicle, every glimpse of him in meetings sent little jolts of memory through me. The way his hands had felt on my skin, the sound of his breathing in my ear, the intensity in his eyes as he moved with me. Around noon, he appeared beside my desk with a coffee cup. "Thought you might need this," he said casually, setting it down. Our fingers brushed as I reached for it, and the brief contact sent electricity up my arm. "Thanks," I murmured, aware that several colleagues were within earshot. He leaned down slightly, pretending to point at something on my screen. "Lunch?" he whispered, his breath warm against my ear. I nodded, not trusting my voice. We met at a quiet cafe several blocks from the office, claiming a corner table away from the lunch crowd. The moment we sat down, the careful professional masks slipped away. "I couldn't concentrate on anything this morning," Lucas admitted, his hand finding mine across the table. "All I could think about was last night." "Same," I confessed. I keep replaying every moment. His thumb traced patterns on my palm, such a simple touch, but it sent warmth spiraling through me. "I want to see you again, tonight. My place this time." The invitation hung between us, loaded with possibility. Part of me wanted to say yes immediately, to lose myself in him again. But the rational part of my mind raised concerns. What about Work? If people find out, I started. They won't, he said firmly. We're both adults. We can be professional during office hours and personal after. He made it sound so simple, but I could already imagine the whispers, the sideways glances, the way office dynamics would shift if anyone suspected. Still, looking into his eyes, seeing the genuine desire there, I found myself nodding. Okay, I whispered. Yes. The afternoon crawled by. Every email, every meeting, every mundane task felt like an obstacle keeping me from him. I caught myself, staring at the clock, counting hours until I could leave, until I could feel his hands on me again. Finally, 5:30 arrived. I gathered my things, trying to appear casual as Lucas and I left separately. He'd given me his address earlier, along with instructions to arrive at 7. I went home first, showering and changing into something that walked the line between casual and enticing. A soft sweater that hugged my curves, jeans that fit perfectly, nothing too obvious, but definitely chosen with him in mind. His apartment was in a converted warehouse downtown, all exposed brick and high ceilings. When he opened the door, he'd changed too, trading his business suit for dark jeans and a Henley that emphasized his lean build. Come in, he said, stepping aside. Can I get you some wine? The space was masculine but warm, with leather furniture and carefully chosen artwork. I accepted the glass of red wine he offered, using it to steady my nerves. Being here felt different from the office encounter, more intentional, more intimate. You have a beautiful place, I said, walking to the large windows overlooking the city. He moved behind me, close enough that I could feel his warmth. Not as beautiful as you, he murmured, his hands settling on my waist. I leaned back against him, feeling his solid presence. Is that your best line? I teased. No, he said, turning me in his arms. This is. Instead of words, he kissed me, soft and deep, tasting like wine and possibility. All the tension from the day melted away, replaced by the same electric connection we discovered the night before. This time there was no rush, no fear of discovery. He led me to his bedroom, switching on a single lamp that cast everything in warm golden light. The bed was large, neatly made with crisp white sheets that would soon be thoroughly mussed. We undressed each other slowly, taking time to explore, to appreciate. His hands skimmed over my skin with reverent attention, as if memorizing every curve, every sensitive spot. When I returned the favor, mapping the planes of his chest, the line of his shoulders, he groaned softly, his eyes closing, in pleasure. You're so beautiful, he whispered, laying me back against the pillows. I want to worship every inch of you. And he did. His lips traced paths along my skin, finding places that made me gasp and arch beneath him. His touch was patient, thorough, designed to build sensation layer by layer until I was trembling with need. When he finally moved over me, settling between my thighs, I was already overwhelmed with want. He entered me slowly, carefully, his eyes never leaving mine. The feeling of connection was intense, deeper than just physical, as if something fundamental had shifted between us. We moved together with increasing passion, finding a rhythm that built toward something powerful. His whispered endearments, the way he looked at me like I was precious, the feeling of his body moving with mine, it all combined into something transcendent. When release finally claimed us both, it was with an intensity that left us both shaking, clinging to each other as waves of sensation washed over us. Afterward, we lay entwined, skin damp with exertion, hearts gradually slowing. Stay, he murmured against my hair. Don't go home tonight. I should have said no, should have maintained some distance, some boundaries. Instead, I found myself nodding, curling closer to his warmth. The next few weeks fell into a pattern. Professional distance during work hours, stolen glances and brief touches when no one was looking, then passionate reunions in the evenings. Sometimes at his place, sometimes mine, but always with the same intensity, the same desperate need for each other. We became experts at hiding our connection. Separate arrivals, casual interactions in meetings, careful not to show favoritism or special attention. But the secret added its own thrill, made every stolen moment more precious. One evening, working late again in his office, the risk became too tempting to resist. The cleaning crew had finished, security was doing rounds on the lower floors, and we had the executive level to ourselves. This is dangerous, I whispered as he pulled me into his arms beside his desk. Everything about you is dangerous, he replied, his hands already finding the zipper of my skirt. You make me lose all sense. The familiar heat built between us, but this time there was an added edge of excitement, the thrill of possibly being caught. His touch was more urgent, more possessive, as if the forbidden nature of our location intensified everything. He lifted me onto his desk again, scattering papers, not caring about anything except the need to be close to me. When he moved between my legs, I wrapped around him, pulling him closer, deeper, until we were lost in each other completely. The sound of the elevator dinging in the distance made us both freeze. Someone was coming up. We separated hastily, straightening clothes, gathering scattered documents. By the time the security guard made his rounds past Lucas's office, we were seated properly, supposedly reviewing quarterly reports. "Evening, Mr. Rodriguez, Ms. Thompson," the guard said, nodding at us through the glass door. "Evening, Carl," Lucas replied smoothly. "Just finishing up some budget reviews." After the guard passed, we looked at each other and burst into nervous laughter. The close call should have been sobering, should have made us more careful. Instead, it only seemed to intensify the attraction between us. But as weeks turned into months, maintaining the secret became more challenging. Colleagues began to notice things, how our presentations seemed perfectly synchronized, how we often worked late on the same projects, how we both seemed happier, more energized. "You're glowing lately," Sarah mentioned one morning, studying my face. "New skincare routine?" "Something like that," I said, deflecting with a smile. But Lucas and I both knew we were walking a tightrope. Office romances were technically allowed, but heavily scrutinized. If HR found out, one of us might be transferred to another department, another building. The thought of seeing him every day but not being able to touch him, kiss him, was unbearable. One Friday evening, after a particularly intense week of stolen moments and careful pretense, Lucas brought up what we'd both been avoiding. "We need to talk about this," he said as we lay tangled in his sheets. "About what we're doing, where this is going." I traced patterns on his chest, buying time before responding. "What do you want to talk about?" "Us. The secrecy. Whether this is sustainable long-term." The conversation I'd been dreading. Because the truth was, what had started as attraction had deepened into something more complex, more meaningful. I was falling for him, hard, but the constraints of our situation made everything feel precarious. "I care about you," I said finally. "More than I should, considering the circumstances." He tilted my chin up, making me meet his eyes. "More than you should? Gemma, I'm falling in love with you." The words hung in the air between us, beautiful and terrifying. Love changed everything, made the stakes higher, made the risks feel more significant. "Lucas," I started, but he pressed a finger gently to my lips. "You don't have to say anything back. I just needed you to know. Whatever happens, whatever we decide about work, about us, I needed you to know how I feel." I kissed his finger, then moved his hand away so I could speak. "I love you too," I whispered. "That's what makes this so complicated." We made love that night with new tenderness, new intensity, as if the spoken words had unlocked something deeper between us. But even as I lost myself in his touch, in the feeling of complete connection, part of my mind was already racing ahead, trying to figure out how to make this work. The following Monday brought unexpected complications. Rachel from HR appeared at my desk first thing in the morning, her expression serious. "Gemma, I need to speak with you privately," she said. "Conference room 3, 5 minutes." My heart hammered as I followed her, trying to project calm. Had someone seen us? Reported us? The weekend's blissful bubble suddenly felt very far away. "Please, sit," Rachel said, closing the door behind us. "I've received some observations about your working relationship with Lucas Rodriguez." My mouth went dry. "Observations? Nothing formal, nothing actionable yet, but people talk. They've noticed you two seem very comfortable together, that you're often working late at the same time, that there might be some personal chemistry." I forced myself to remain calm, professional. "Lucas and I work well together. We're both committed to producing quality content." Rachel nodded, but her expression remained serious. "I'm sure that's true, but I need to remind you of company policy regarding workplace relationships. They're not forbidden, but they must be disclosed to HR if they become romantic in nature." The implication was clear. She suspected but couldn't prove anything yet. We were walking on increasingly thin ice. "Of course," I said evenly. "I understand company policy." "Good. I hope we won't need to have this conversation again." I returned to my desk with my mind racing. We'd been so careful, or so we thought, but apparently not careful enough. The question now was whether to come clean voluntarily or try to be even more discreet. I caught Lucas's eye across the office and nodded toward the break room. We met there a few minutes later, speaking in low voices while pretending to discuss weekend plans. Rachel pulled me in, I said quietly. "She knows something." His jaw tightened. "What exactly did she say?" I gave him the highlights, watching his expression grow more serious. We both understood the implications. Our secret was becoming an open secret, which meant we had to make a choice. "We could transfer," he said. "I've had offers from other agencies." "You'd leave for me?" "In a heartbeat." But is that what you want? To start over somewhere else? The question haunted me for the rest of the day. Everything was getting more complicated, but my feelings for Lucas only seemed to deepen. The thought of losing him, either to a transfer or to the necessity of maintaining professional distance, was painful. That evening, we met at a small restaurant far from our usual haunts, needing neutral ground to have this conversation properly. "I've been thinking," Lucas said over dinner, "about what Rachel said, about our options. And I think we should tell them, officially disclose the relationship, show that we're serious about this, that it's not just some casual office fling." The suggestion both excited and terrified me. Going public would change everything, remove the secret thrill, but also the constant stress of hiding. We'd be subject to scrutiny, potential gossip, possible policy complications. What if they separate us? Different departments, different projects? Then we deal with it. At least we'd be honest about what we are. I studied his face, seeing the certainty there, the commitment. He was willing to risk his career advancement, his comfortable position, for the chance to be open about us. "Okay," I said finally. "Let's do it." We scheduled a meeting with Rachel for the following week, spending the intervening days in a strange limbo between secrecy and openness. The stolen moments felt more precious, knowing they might be our last as secret lovers. The night before our meeting with HR, we made love with desperate intensity, as if trying to memorize every sensation, every emotion, before everything changed. Afterward, lying in each other's arms, Lucas traced patterns on my shoulder. "Whatever happens tomorrow, I don't regret any of this," he said softly. "Even if they transfer one of us? Even then, you've changed everything for me, Gemma. Made me feel alive in ways I didn't know were possible." I turned in his arms, studying, his face in the dim light. "I love you," I whispered, "whatever comes next." The meeting with Rachel went better than expected. While she expressed some concerns about workplace dynamics and potential conflicts of interest, she seemed genuinely pleased that we were being proactive about disclosure. "We'll need to adjust some project assignments," she explained. "Make sure there's no appearance of favoritism or preferential treatment, but as long as you both maintain professionalism during work hours, the company supports healthy relationships between consenting adults." The relief was enormous. We wouldn't be separated, wouldn't have to choose between career and love. There would be adjustments, some awkwardness as colleagues processed the news, but we'd weather it together. Walking out of that meeting, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. No more stolen glances, no more careful pretense. We could be ourselves, finally, completely. That evening, Lucas took me to dinner at the nicest restaurant in town, no longer worried about who might see us together. Over champagne and candlelight, he reached across the table to take my hand. "To no more secrets," he said, raising his glass. "To no more hiding," I agreed, clinking mine against his. The months that followed brought their own challenges and rewards. Some colleagues were supportive. Others seemed disappointed they'd missed the drama of figuring it out themselves. There were a few awkward moments, some reshuffled project teams, but nothing we couldn't handle together. More importantly, removing the secrecy allowed our relationship to deepen in new ways. We could have lunch together openly, attend office parties as a couple, share the small daily intimacies that make relationships feel real and lasting. 1 year later, Lucas proposed during a weekend getaway to the mountains. The ring was perfect, the setting romantic, but what made the moment special was how natural it felt, how right. "You know," I said as we celebrated with more champagne, "I never thought that working late would lead to this." He pulled me close, kissing me with all the passion that had started this journey. "Best overtime I ever put in," he murmured against my lips. Looking back now, from the perspective of our shared apartment, our shared life, our shared future, I can honestly say that taking that risk, crossing that professional line, was the best decision I ever made. Not because workplace romances are always wise, they're not, but because sometimes when you find the right person, you have to be brave enough to reach for happiness, even when it's complicated. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you had to choose between playing it safe and taking a chance on something amazing? What did you do, and do you regret it? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. And if you enjoyed this tale of office romance and secret passion, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more. Turn on those notifications so you never miss a story that might just inspire you to take your own leap of faith. Thanks for reading, and I'll see you next time.